Elected a new pope, but they're not saying who it is yet, so
I'll let you know.
I don't want to preempt my talk here. And if you have plans for tomorrow, make sure they're inside. It's going to be raining. So everybody's got a sort of a secret hobby or a thing they do. And mine is weather. I got interested in weather when I was about 13, and we had a big snow day. I woke up in the morning, there was about a foot of snow on the ground on Long Island, and I was really happy because there was no school. Yeah, but I said, boy, that's weird, all that snow. We never get a snow like that, and I decided I was interested in weather. And I went out and bought a little thermometer. My mother put it up on the side of the house, and you know, within a couple of years, I started keeping weather records and followed the weather page in the newspaper back then. TV weather wasn't very good, but I did watch that as well. So I'm going to tell you about my weather hobby and observations, and then talk a little bit about climate change. I personally like cold, snowy weather, which I know doesn't endear me to everybody. And I'm sad because we have less of it than we're used to. And we're probably going to have even less in the future. So, but we still have some. So this is, I have some weather stations, but these are my digital electronic weather stations. An old one and a new one. The old one wasn't working right. And they're in my yard. And the black thing catches the rain. This is the transmitter, and where the white stuff is, that's where the thermometer and humidity gauges are. That information is relayed into my house. It's on the internet. If you want the website, I can give it to you. But there are websites that have, there's one called WeatherLink that has thousands of stations across the world. And you can, if you want to know what the weather now is in Phoenix or Moscow, Russia, you can get right in there.
So if I wanted to know how much rain we had on a particular day, I can tap into your weather station and find out. Because I was trying to start greenskeeper, I think he exaggerated to keep the cards off the board.
He's got a self-interest.
I get the truth. Now, where do you live?
I'm not telling you.
Okay.
I lived there, Charlie.
Okay.
So this is my other instrument shelter. It's got an old-fashioned thermometer in it. That's the way weathermen used to operate before digital. And I still use that. And inside, I've got an ancient maximum minimum thermometer with a mercury column that I've had over 60 years. So it still works. Even though it had a windstorm and knocked the whole thing down once, it somehow survived. And this is the way I keep records, and this is the standard format that the National Weather Service uses for all climate recordings around the country. And every day, record the high and the low temperature, how much precipitation down to the 100th of an inch, and how much snow. And this is January, so how much snow is on the ground in inches. So, and that's the format that they use to track weather and climate change.
What's snow depth?
How deep it is on the ground.
I see, so it will drop.
Trace. So this was January 22. It was pretty cold. The average temperature was 25. That's below normal for here. So anyway, I have one of these for every month, and it's all on Excel spreadsheets and easily summarized.
That's amazing.
And I've kept the records in the Canaan since '87. Before that, 15 years in Westchester. And I send reports in every day to something, precipitation reports. There's a network of 12,000 weather geeks across the country who send in precipitation measures. The reports out of the airports where we have official weather stations aren't very reliable, frankly. So this is much better. I'm a storm train spotter for the Weather Service. I only report in when we have something, big, major snowstorm or something. And the live readings are on the weather link app, so.
Do things like wind bursts or things like that get recorded, micro?
I don't have a wind anemometer, they call it, at my house because I'm in a low area and we just don't get a lot of wind, so it's not worth it. This would be a great place to track the wind.
That's increasing.
So I'm going to talk about New Canaan weather, which we all know well, but we never really think about it. And it rains a lot here. So we don't have to worry about wildfires, really. Oh, that's nice. We get about 55 inches of rain, and about 1 day out of 3, we'll have some measurable rain. We don't have a wet and dry season. It's pretty constant through the year. If you go to California, from now until October, they basically get no rain, and it's a tinderbox. So it's nice to have a sunny day, but it's a little scary.
Yeah.
These are the biggest. We've had 3 rainstorms of over 6 inches in basically 24 hours.
Wow.
And it's green and heavily forested here. We're not quite a rainforest, but it's pretty close to that. And this is just for my station over the period. The average rain, 55 inches, and you can see the average each month is 4 or 5 inches every month. So it's very steady.
What was surprising to me when I came here, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, which is known for its rain.
Yeah.
There's much more rain here per annum than in Portland,
Yeah, well,
which
there's,
surprised me.
Oh, that's good. It's surprising. I didn't know that.
Didn't expect that at all.
well, the summers out there tend to be dryish.
That's true.
Yeah.
Tom, on that, I was I was for many years on the board of a gold mining company that operates in Tanzania, which is right on the equator. Tropics we have 2 seasons, wet and dry, right? No
Yes.
4 seasons. And we had a board meeting, the one board meeting we had in Stamford here, and the general manager of the mine, he came to the meeting. He wasn't on the board, but he came to make a presentation. And he'd never been to the States before, and it was August, and we were in this high-rise in Stamford with a glass all around, and there was a massive thunderstorm, and it went almost dark. And he said to me, "Rob, when is the rainy season here?" And I'd never thought about that, and I thought for a minute, I said, "That's a good question. It starts in January and it ends in December."
So this is a map, pretty map of the country showing average rainfall. You see the East Coast is green, and the West, with a few exceptions, is really dry. We know that. This is kind of a cool global map, and it's called the leaf index, and it measures between the ground and the sky how many layers of leaves there are. I don't know how to do it. But this is published in the European forecast model. It has these maps every day forecasted out for the next 2 weeks. I don't know how to do it. But you can see that apart from the Amazon,
Yeah.
we live in the leafiest part of the world.
Wow.
It's kind of interesting. Just look outside, so. And left to its own devices, if people moved out of here, this place would be a jungle within 10 years. This is a trend line at my own station. Basically, it's been no trend. We have not even that big a swing. So the rainfall's been very steady, up and down a little bit each year.
Tom,
Yeah.
are there any measurements that look at each storm and see whether there's more intensity?
I'll
When it
talk
does
about that,
rain?
but the climate, there is a climate change going on, and there's some significant things to worry about, but I think the news reports about higher frequency of storms is malarkey. I just don't buy it. The sea level's rising, deserts are expanding in certain areas, shrinking in others. Heating bills are gonna go up, cooling bills are gonna go up. But frequency of storms, I think that's been exaggerated as kind of a way to build support for climate change activism and not really honest, I think. That's my opinion. Snow and ice. We get snow every winter, but it's very variable. We actually average about 40 inches a year per season. Back in the 90s, we had a winter with 101 inches. And then,
Sorry, I wasn't here for that.
well, we've had some with, 10 inches. We've had 52 storms of 8+ inches, which works out to about every year, 1.5 per year. And the biggest snowstorms were around 20 inches. January of 11, and I have a picture of that, was the snowiest month, 52 inches in 1 month. That's a lot of snow. And we average about 6 weeks of snow on the ground, a little bit or a lot, in New Canaan. Now up north they get more, down south a lot less. This is the good old days, 2011, not that long ago really. This is our backyard, and that's Canaan. And that is not snow shoveled into a pile, that was the level in the whole yard. And a lot of people, including me, went out and bought snow rakes, and I still have mine in the garage. I haven't touched it since. But you can see on our back porch here, we had and that was heavy ice too. It was,
Yeah, you couldn't even let your dog out.
you had to dig a tunnel to go in it.
I
remember the town was
He's a big dog.
relocating
Yeah.
snow
So this was
too.
Yeah.
amazing.
remember that they were done?
So the snowfall map across the country, pretty pronounced difference north to south, and we're kind of in the middle here, with light blue. And snowfall trend a little bit down, I think, but still, and the last 3 seasons have been pretty light on snow, as you may recall.
Yeah. We seem to be getting a lot of ice then.
Yes. And where we live, we're close to the ocean, so many winter storms are a mix of snow, sleet, and rain, freezing rain. We don't get the big fluffy snowstorms that much, so. Bill?
Yeah, it always surprises me how much more snow you're gonna get just, literally 20 minutes north of us. And I'm sure we've all listened to the weather reports where they'll literally say, north of the Merritt, expect 5 inches, south of the Merritt, mix, wintry mix.
Yeah.
And is that because of the proximity to Lower Island Sound, is that what that all?
Well, it's big, particularly in the first half of the winter, the water's warm, so in December, a lot of the storms will turn to rain here. Later in the winter, when it cools off, not so much. But if you go north, you've got elevation, and further north, so if you go to Richfield versus Darien, a big difference. Many times. This is snow cover on the ground, and that's very variable. We've had some winters, not too many recently, where we've had almost 90 days of snow on the ground. But a couple of years ago, we had 10 days, and that was very variable.
That was due to COVID.
Probably right. This is the
Can I just interrupt?
Sure.
We have a new pope. He's the first American pope.
Oh, hi.
Robert Prevost.
Oh,
This is
Wow.
Cardinal Robert Prevost is the
Where's
new
he
pope.
from?
From what country?
From
From
America.
America.
From the United States.
America?
Yeah, this America.
What's it?
Wow.
I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but that's the news. So I just wanted to share that with you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Wow. Worth an applause. Thank you, Scott. So this is average temperatures here in Canaan got a big swing from summer to winter. If you go to London, England, you can hardly tell if it's summer or winter. Not a lot of difference. You know, the parks are green all year and so forth. Here, it's a pretty sharp difference. In the summer, average highs in the low 80s. So that's not too bad, really. And then the 20s and 30s in the winter. And the extreme temperatures, we've had a handful of days over 100 since I've been here. And we did have a 14 below zero in 2018. We had a night where we had a lot of snow, it was very cold, and then it was clear and the wind died down, and in those conditions, the temperature will really plummet. Now this is the temperature trend over the period since I've been in New Canaan in my yard.
Wow. So you can.
Is that a
It's
trend?
definitely going up. It's definitely going up.
It's like the real deal. So people say climate change is a hoax, not a hoax. And every station would show like that. This is,
Is that about 1.4, 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit?
the difference,
Yeah.
it's more like 2, I think, but it's pretty pronounced. And this year is still going in that direction, it's gonna be up. So, this is the global temperature average by month over since 1979. So that's very similar.
So, Tom, what is that, what do those numbers actually mean? How do you calculate a global temperature?
You know, I don't know the details, but they have thousands of stations, and they average them all together. And they make sure they're, spread apart so you get a.
Do you think it's equal weight to each station? Because
No.
I would think that there'd be some variability in the course of,
Oh, it's
and on any given day, sometimes it's above normal, sometimes it's below normal in a given spot, and so I've always
It's
wondered
true.
how they calculate.
It's true in a given spot,
Yeah,
but right now, pretty much every day around the world is above normal. And most places are having above historic normal weather. And that's, my earlier chart shows that.
So the temperature, the warming temperatures, that's not a cyclical thing that just happens through time?
It could be, but it's been a pretty long uphill climb. And if you go back hundreds of years, they're able to sort of figure it out. It was more gradual, but it's been warming since the time of the revolution here. But slowly, and that might be cyclical. But once the carbon dioxide and methane levels in the atmosphere really, it's like a hockey stick.
Right, the second derivative is positive, right?
Yeah.
It's increasing at an increasing
Yeah.
rate.
So global greenhouse gases have just exploded in the last 100 years. And I have some stuff on that too. So these are some various climate zones in the country, which people look at.
We're at 6 feet.
And we are, if you're building a house, Scott probably knows more about this, but you have to, depending on where you are, you have to build it in a lot different way, one place to another, so. This is the plant hardiness that Keith mentioned. It really measures the low temperature in the winter. So up here, it gets to 30, 40 below, you have to have really hardy plants. In the south, anything goes.
Just like the people.
Now this is it. Here. This is an interesting map called a heat zone map. It's the number of hot days every year, and I think it's 86 or higher is considered hot. And so we're still pretty cool here. We average like 30, 40 days like that. In the south, the bottom of the Sun Belt, Florida, Texas, Arizona, more than half the days are hot, so there's a big difference, which we kind of knew. So this is some data from a couple of summers ago. Baby, it's hot outside. And I looked at New Canaan versus some popular places in the south. And while they're nice in the winter, they are pretty toasty in the summer. This particular summer, this is during July and August, Naples, Austin, and Phoenix were over 90 degrees virtually every day. And Austin and Phoenix over 100 most days.
We only have
Tom,
one.
have you
Only
ever
one day
crossed?
above 90.
Yeah. Question?
No, I was just curious that only one day above 90.
Yep, that was
Indicating.
indicated, not many that year. Last year we had maybe 8.
Okay.
Have you ever cross-referenced the humidity and temperature?
I don't have,
Because I find that's a bigger determinant
I don't have a lot of data on that.
versus discomfort.
In these locales, Charleston and Naples are very humid in summer. So they would have extreme humidity. Austin, sort of medium, and Phoenix, of course, dry, except in August when they have the monsoon season, and then it's humid there too. So that's why we have snowbirds. They don't. A lot of people don't stay in Florida in the summer.
So you're measuring the actual temperature, right?
Yes,
The news people are gonna talk about
They have
how
a
it
heat
feels,
index.
right? The-
Yeah, the heat index is just a function of the temperature and the humidity. They've got a way to.
Yeah, the real feel.
That's a very good measure, the heat index. And,
So if you have a thermometer which is a maximum minimum, are you taking a reading of maximum minimum each day?
yeah, and it doesn't take me a lot of time,
Go ahead.
a minute, so.
Can you do it remotely if you're traveling?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when we're away, I gotta have the record, so. Tropical storms, we get some here, as you know. We've had 3 notable ones this century so far. Tropical Irene, 2011, Sandy, which is the worst, back in 2012, and then Isaias in 2020. And they all knocked down tons of trees, and most people were out out of power for days. And Sandy was the worst. We had hurricane force gusts here, I think, I remember. I stepped outside and I got inside so fast, it was scary. And we were, that was a marginal category 1 strength. Can you imagine being in a category 3 or 4?
And we've had how many of those in the last 100 years? They talk a great deal about the big storms of 38 and
Yeah.
55 being
Right.
the 2 that sort of flattened Norwalk
Yeah.
and New England.
Well, I don't know.
Is that typical, what we can expect? Another one of those?
The 38 storm was the biggest, and I've read a lot about that.
Well, Skip can tell us about it.
But they didn't have any warning too, so maybe the
No.
drama of all
No,
that.
if you look at the New York Times had shifting gales, or something was the forecast for the day, whatever that is. And people in coastal Rhode Island and all across South Shore had no warning. The storm was offshore, it sort of backed in off the ocean. They had no satellites, of course, no radar, so. And it was
Wow.
pretty horrible. And this area was hit pretty hard, but not like further east.
Sure.
So,
There's a book called The Southern Sea, which was written about that hurricane, and it was really fascinating, the detail on it.
Sudden storm, I think,
Southern
right?
Storm, you're right.
Yeah, it's super. If you haven't read it, it's super.
so this is Sandy, this is the path that Sandy took. It was a hurricane offshore and not doing anybody any harm. But then, in a bizarre fashion, usually the storms go that way. This one decided to come inland, and it made a beeline right for Atlantic City. And we were on the north side, And on the right side, that's the dangerous semicircle of a hurricane because it spins like this. So it was like a perfect storm, so to speak. And this is the map of the storm surge for Sandy, and it's 14 feet. It was 13 or 14 feet in New York Harbor,
Wow.
Hoboken, New Jersey, and the Rockaways, and about 10 or 12 feet in eastern Long Island Sound. So,
Tom, isn't that the one that also hit Vermont? I mean, Vermont never would get that
It
hurricane.
did end up there.
I don't think that was another one.
I don't know, because,
If Sandy went west, it didn't really go north.
maybe it was only one of them. Well, Sandy didn't have that much rain though, did it?
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't wind, it was wind.
Yeah.
And surge. Ridiculous surge, you know. I mean, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was flooded out.
Yeah, it was.
So, this is a frequency map of northeast hurricanes. You can't read it, but over the course of 110 years, we've had 6 or 8, so hurricanes hitting the coast. So that's not as bad as Florida, where they would have probably four times as much and they're stronger. Just some tornadoes, they're rare, but New Canaan actually had a tornado in 2018. I was in town that day and it was scary. It was dark and the wind came up and howled. But it started at the corner of Weed and Marshall Ridge. Everybody lives there. And went south over here, right over this building almost, into Norwalk. But it didn't do a lot of damage. This is a map of tornado frequency over a 70-year period. And we live in a pretty good part of the country compared to others. This is a little bit of climate change now. New Canaan winters are getting milder. This is a sort of measure of how severe the winter is.
So high is bad.
High is bad, yeah. And last winter, you can see it's kind of average. We did have a lot of cold weather, not a lot of snow. So here in New Canaan, we have milder winters. Not as much ice underfoot, and that's good for people.
You're in trouble, Tom.
Yep, I see that. Less reason to go south. And I didn't, is Ann still giving you? There we are. There's still some good reasons to go south, like grandchildren.
Okay, yeah.
That's the best reason.
This is projected rise in sea level. So the East Coast is supposed to go up by another foot by 2050. So don't buy waterfront property. I'm not real optimistic about arresting the emissions from fossil fuels because the world has an enormous appetite for energy. And India and China kind of overwhelm the rest of the world. So, and everybody's doing renewables, that's great, but we still need more energy than that can even satisfy. So, and this is energy consumption by source in China over the last 20 years. This purple is coal.
Wow.
So, and this is coal production in India, which actually has a lot of coal. So, India is building 100,000 new coal rail cars. So,
It's building what?
100,000 new coal rail cars to transport coal to its power plants.
Hey,
So-
Tom, on your previous slide, which one of those colors was the United States? Are those, no, that's not.
This is
China.
China. This is
That's
China.
just China, that's China, okay, got it.
Now, the U.S. is kind of, we've been doing a pretty good job of controlling our emissions. But India and China, with all the people they have, that's the end of my talk, by the way.
Oh, Tom, that was great.
Tom, you're following a long tradition I was reading about signing the Declaration of Independence, and most of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were farmers. And they were keeping track every single day because of their crops. Thomas Jefferson and all those guys, they were all keeping track of the weather, just like you.
I've always thought of him like Jefferson.